Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. We are back with the first weekly analysis of the year. Hope you guys are looking forward to it. On the screen, like always, are the pairs we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video because I do have a bonus pair in store, so make sure you do stay to the end to find out which pair that is. But like always, I'll go through my trading week personally before we do get into the video. So if there's a pair you want to skip ahead to, feel free to skip ahead on the timestamps, but we'll talk about my trades for the week first. I entered two positions, one a Euro-Yen short and the other on CHF JPY short. Euro-Yen did end up in a loss, and CHF JPY I'm still in currently. But yeah, Euro-Yen looking for some shorts. Again, very identical setups. I was looking at both of them quite a lot throughout the end of the week. Again, very similar setups. As you can see, if I whip out the old trend line tool, we had some really nice confluence here for Euro-Yen. And I was basically just looking for the market to come into this area of confluence, looking for the lower high. And we had a really nice Fibonacci in that area there as well. If I just darken that up for you guys, coming to that 0.618. So I was looking for the market to form simply just another lower high. We've had this nice bearish trend for quite a while now in the 4H time frame, and you can see the structure is very clear. So I'm looking for that next lower high for push to the downside. And for me, it looks like I just entered the market a little bit too early. Entered the trade on this candle there, then we saw spikes to the upside, take me out the trade. Now the market's kind of moving sideways along that area and potentially still could actually roll over and form that lower high. So it may just be a setup that I entered a little bit too early. According to my plan, entered at the right time, but just for the timing of the market itself, might have been a little bit too early, and can still see that roll over to the downside. And again, like I said, I was eyeing up CHF JPY as well. Very similar setup. As you can see, we had that prior swing low there as resistance. We also had the trend line as well, so it's pretty identical really with the confluence there. We also had some nice fib confluence there as well. I entered after this hourly candle here, closing back below the trend line, and then my stop loss was above there. So I'm currently sitting in this position still. NFP didn't do too much. It was interesting to see what NFP will do, whether it would just take me out of the position or dump in my favor. Didn't really do too much, still moving sideways, quite frankly. But yeah, still in that position, so still be looking for that lower high to form. Again, very clear setup as well. The lower lows and lower highs in the market have been quite present. Now I'm looking for another one to form over here for another push to the downside, and targets for this trade are back down at those lows. So this one I'm holding over the weekend. We'll see how things get on during next week. But yeah, so only two positions, one loss, one currently still in. First trade of the year was a loss, so that's unfortunate, but who doesn't like an underdog story? So we'll see how CHF JPY gets on. I'll let you guys know the following week. But back to the analysis. So EURUSD, big push to the upside. This one was moving quite a bit this week. Strong move to the downside, followed by a big move back up again due to NFP. And for me, I'm actually still looking at sells for EURUSD. We took out those lows here, so we had that impulse to the downside, correction of the impulse, taking out those lows. So we've got some bearish structure here to play with. And obviously, if you guys haven't been on my weekly analysis, on my live streams, you know that I have been talking about this key monthly area that the market is still trading in, where I do think if we do have some big rejection here, we could actually see a big move to the downside. So I'm actually favoring looking for that reversal for EURUSD, and now I do have some bearish structure here on the 4H with that impulse, correction, impulse. Now I'm looking to see if we can hold on to this level here. So we've had a pretty strong close there. Looks like the market's slightly closed above, but for me, I'm going to still be looking to see if we can throw some wicks to the upside, throw some rejection, and then I'll be looking for some sells pretty early on the week, Monday, Tuesday, from around this region here. Looking for some sells back down to that prior low. Again, nothing too crazy. If my analysis is correct in the higher time frames, we could go a lot further to the downside. But that's the target I would have for this particular trade. If we start breaking through this structure, then we most likely are just going to go take out those highs there, and we're going to see this bullish trend here since back in September, probably still continue and probably see some new highs past this point. So if you start breaking through this high, I'm just going to sit on my hands for EURUSD and see what happens next. But if you can start throwing some wicks here, some rejection, close back underneath the level, I'll be interested in some shorts to take it back down into that support level there. So 1.06240, I'm looking at shorts from that level, and targets 1.05048 is going to be my analysis for EURUSD going into next week. Okay, so now on to USD JPY. So for me, for this one, still with a bearish bias, still looking for more downside for it. On the monthly time frame, I'm looking for price to get back down to this area here around the 125 mark. So For the meantime, I'm still looking at more downside for USD JPY until we get down to that level at 125. And on the 4H time frame, we've got these consecutive lower swing highs. So as long as we maintain this structure, 125, 126 is where I see the market going. You can see very clear structure here, lower swing low, lower swing high, so on and so forth. And recently the market came back to respect that prior high. And as long as we maintain that, we also have some nice confidence with the trend line here. As long as we maintain that, I am looking at 126, 125 back down there for this pair. So going to next week, only looking for selling opportunities. There could be some buys, but for me, I do think that we're short-lived. For me, the sells are still the bigger trade, the bigger bet. So that's what I'll be focusing on for this one. Recently, we have snapped back underneath this level here. So if I can see some type of correction into this area, I will be looking at shorts anywhere around the 133,500 to 134 mark, looking at some more downside. Would it be nice to enter a trade up there, but now the market's trading down here. So you do want to see a pullback before looking to enter any shorts. Obviously, we do have some really nice targets to work with back down at 130. Possibly you can look to push the trade further to 126, 125, if you're feeling a little bit brave and you want to, maximize your risk to reward. But do be aware that multiple areas where the market could pull back against you. Again, the market doesn't necessarily have to get to 126, 125. That's just a high probable area based on the higher time frames. But if you want to take some good profit, coming to a very key area, 130 is definitely the point to do that. So for me, for next week, looking at push to 130, if we snap through that, then I'll start looking at 126, 125. But for next week, hopefully you can see a correction into that level there after NFP, 133,500, 134, retest of that area. We'll be looking at shorts back down into that price swing low for next week. Okay, so now on to USD CAD. So USD CAD over the past few days, weeks, has been consolidating, very choppy price action. However, the market is starting to print some lower lows and some lower highs. As you can see, we've gone from making equal highs here. We made a low, lower low, lower low, another lower low, also lower high, another lower high. So the market very slowly starting to roll over to the downside. So for me, for next week, excuse me, I'm not looking for anything crazy for USD CAD because of how corrective it is. So I'm not going to be looking for, okay, price back down to the prior lows. It could get there. But I'm going to play it step by step, level by level. So this level here, very important, 1.34, this level here as well. And then obviously we've got the prior low there. But simply what I'm looking for USD CAD is another correction to the upside, another lower high, maybe somewhere around this region, coming into retest this structure here. So that price support over here, price support over there. Turn resistance around the 1.355 mark, looking for that next lower high for move to the downside. We've got the first high, the second, the third, looking for fourth around there, and then a push to the downside. Targets 1.34 and then 1.33200 around there, and then potentially those lows as well. But quite frankly, I'll probably be exiting the trade completely around one of these two areas, depending on risk to reward. But with USD CAD, I have to be leaning towards the bearish side of things, based on structure, based on momentum as well. But because the market's so corrective and it is not very clear, it's not really a trade that I will look to push too far and start to anticipate some new lows or new highs forming, above some major swing points. So USD CAD for me, my eyes will be peeled on 1.355 if you can get a correction back up there again. Looking for lower high formation, some rejection, some candlestick patterns, and targets to 1.34 or potentially 1.33200 depending on risk reward and how everything's set up, because we could open the market bearish, tap into 1.34 and then pull back. Then I'll probably look at this level here. If we don't tap 1.34 and just pull back straight away, then my target will probably be 1.34. So we'll see what happens on market open. But in terms of bias and everything, it will be to the short side of things, and those would be my targets going into next week. Okay, so now to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound for me is still trading at a pretty critical area on the daily time frame for some sells. Again, I still do have an overall bullish bias for this one, so I'm actually looking for a correction to the downside, some type of higher low to form, and the market to start pushing to the upside again. But for now, we are testing a key area. We've just taken liquidity just above this high here, tapping to a very key resistance. You can see all those wicks there to the upside. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So tons of wicks into that resistance. The market's having a really hard time trying to break through this area, so I do think it's time to see some downside, some retracement. Personally, I'll be looking to see what happens at this area here for some buys back up again, but for now, going to next week, sells up around the 0.884, 886 area is looking like the best place to look to go short from. Again, longs any around here, I wouldn't entertain that idea. I want my pullbacks to be a little bit deeper than that, and up here I'd only be looking to focus on sells. So if the market can have another rally to the upside like it did over here, it pushed down, rally to the upside, respect the resistance, came back down again. If the market can do that one more time, that would be a great place to look to play some shorts and take advantage of some downside back down to around the 0.87200, 0.87 area. And then from here as well, I'll start looking for my buys, but I'm not too sure if that will happen next week, but we'll keep that in the back of our heads anyway. So euro pound for me, great place to look to sell. The market is still quite corrective, so you want to be focusing your shorts up at the extremes, up at the highs, not trying to get too fancy and try and find some trades in here. Very difficult, and you're most likely to get stopped out on just a random wick or anything. So your best thing you want to do is put your stop loss in a safe place, trade at the highs, back at around the 0.885, 886 area. Stop loss above that, and you can target either the lows here, depending on what you want from the market, or you got that key consolidation around the 0.872 mark there as well. But my buys for euro pound going to next week will be bearish, and then hopefully if you do get some nice downside, I'll be looking at some longs later in the week, or maybe next week looking at some longs later on. But euro pound looking at some more downside. Shorts at the resistance look good, and targets around the 0.872 mark going into next week. Okay, so now onto AUD/USD. So for this pair, it has been quite corrective. Practically, we do have consolidation here for AUD/USD, but the market ever so slowly is pushing to the upside. You can see with the higher lows here, the market is still slightly pushing to the upside. We do have a key resistance here, which I do think if the market does hold, there could be some nice short-term sells back down again. Reason why I say short-term is because the market does have the capability of placing another higher low and then coming straight back up again. So you want to be able to make sure you're taking profit and protecting yourself against that, because as you can see, every time the market does roll over, we form a higher low and come straight back to the upside. So for AUD/USD, keep an eye on 0.68700 up at this area. You can see 1, 2, potentially 3 rejections off this level here. So it is a really nice place to look to sell from, but it could be short-lived. You can still get a decent risk reward, to be honest, but in terms of how far it can go, not too sure how far it could go, because you're creating those higher lows. If you break through structure, then happy days, we could actually be looking at a bigger reversal, because on the higher time frames, I actually am still quite bearish. On AUD/USD, you can see the higher time frames, all these lower highs consecutive since February last year. Market's still placing these lower highs, and again, I'm looking for another lower high to develop somewhere for a big move to the downside. As you can see, you've got the lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Looking for lower highs somewhere for a big move down. However, the market right now is still slowly correctively moving to the upside, so we could still see a breakout to the upside and then a push back down. As long as we don't break through this structural high here, all the way up at 0.713, I'm still looking for that bigger down move for AUD/USD. And there's also a key area here we could look to tap into, that key level there, that prior low around 0.7. We could break out into that level and then potentially roll over. So there could be some nice longs on the break and retest of this high. If that doesn't hold there and break through it, you can look at the break and retest for some longs, something like that, on the retest of that level at 0.687, back up to 0.698, 0.7, around those areas there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for next week for AUD/USD. Until we start breaking out those lows there, I'm still looking at the market pushing higher, and then when we start breaking some critical lows, that's when I do think that bigger time frame sell-off can happen, and that's where I'll start looking at some of these lows there at 0.62. But for the time being, we're quite choppy. The market's still placing higher lows, so I've got to favor the buys right now until we see that higher time frame selling pressure come in. So into next week, keep an eye on that level there, which the market's trading at now, so there could be some sells quite early on in the week. If we see some successful rejection, London, New York session, could look for some sells back down to the 0.678 area where a potential higher low could form. If you just break straight through, look for the retest, then we could be seeing a push back up to 0.7. So that's the plan going into next week for AUD/USD. And now on to NZD CAD. So for this pair, we're slowly heading towards the downside. I do have a bearish bias for NZD CAD. If I quickly go to the higher time frames, you can see how the market's been moving over the past, I was going to say a few months, but it's actually more like a few years. The market, every time we do have a sharp rally to the upside, we form a big wick. The market comes straight back down to the downside. As you can see, we've been very slowly heading towards the downside, and recently we've seen the exact same process happen. Big spike to the upside, sorry. Now I'm looking at the market coming back down again. There's a very key level here at 0.83. I'm looking for us to go and retest. We potentially could go a lot further back down to those lows, obviously, but for now we'll be looking at 0.83 after this nice spike to the upside there for NZD CAD. So taking that information onto the 4H time frame, you can see we do have this nice bearish structure here. Market's making lower swing highs and lower lows. Now I'm looking at us doing that pattern back down to that level where potentially we could rally to the upside again or break through. That'll be a conversation for another date, but for me the market structure is still bearish as long as we go and take out this resistance here. I'm looking at the market rolling over to 0.83. so now I'm looking for areas to sell it, and this is the first level that pops out at me. Obviously if that level doesn't hold, I'll be looking at the resistance up here, and if obviously that doesn't hold, then I'll be sitting on my hands backing away, because at that point we might be looking at a reversal back to the highs up there. So at that point, break and retest is probably the best bet, and looking for buys back up to 0.88. But for now, bearish bias, that's what the higher time frames are telling me. 4H is bearish structure as well, so I'm more than happy to look for some sells for this one. Areas of interest, we've got 0.85600 around there ish. Now we'll be looking for some type of rejection around there. Of course, if I don't get that, then I'll look slightly higher at the extremes here of that resistance where we've seen a lot of rejection of late, as you can see. So if I do see another spike into that, more than happy to look for some sells up at that resistance. And again, targets will be probably back down to that prior low, depending on risk reward and how things are moving. I might look to target 0.83 overall, but 0.844 is definitely a significant level. Reason being is our price swing low, so we definitely could do something like this and work our way back up again. So it probably is a good idea to take some profit down at that low. But for me, for NZD CAD, keeping an eye on this resistance here and that level just above it. So 0.856 and 0.86100 areas look good to sell. Targets being 0.844 and 0.833 going into next week. Okay, so now onto pound NZD, which is very corrective and ever so slowly rolling over to the downside, which is still my bias for the pair as well. I'm still looking at us coming back down to test at this key level of support here. You can see we had this humongous move to the upside, but momentum completely failed. Market failed to continue that impulse move, and it rolled back over. So I'm looking at us coming right back down to test that support where all this momentum came from. And you can see on the daily time frame, the market is still very corrective and still just slowly rolling over to the downside. So any move to the upside for me, back up into resistance, back up to around the 1.92 area, for me is a valid place to start to sell the market. So anywhere around there, looking for some rejection. It'll be lovely to get some wicks like we've been seeing a bunch of times over there. Get some wicks down the 4H, can enter on that, and again looking for push to the downside. You can look for push down to 1.88, 885, 88 down at that key weekly support, but I would highly recommend as well looking to take some profit coming back down to the support level, because as you can see, every time the market does come back down and test the support, we're going to see a reaction to the upside. So it might be best to take some profit on the way down before we do get to that weekly time frame level of support. But in terms of direction, as long as you don't break through structure, as long as we can hold that 1.92 area, I'm expecting some more downside for pound NZD. So targets for this one, back down to 1.9 here. Obviously you do want to see a pullback first. Shorts around here are probably not a good idea, and if you can break through 1.9, we'll be looking at 1.885 for next week. Okay, so now onto CAD Yen, which is still showing beautiful bearish structure as we can see here. Quickly on the monthly time frame, I'm still looking at more downside for this one on this time frame here as well, similar to the analysis on USD JPY, looking for a push down to this 93 level to come and retest some structure. So as long as we maintain that bearish structure in the 4H, which we are doing very well currently, I'm still looking at some more downside for this one. And now we've just pulled back into some structure. As long as we can maintain that, look at move to the downside into the prior lows, and eventually probably work our way back down to that 93 mark down there as well. So for next week, coming to some nice resistance here, we'll look to see what type of rejection we can get there. The market is very, very corrective now after a strong impulse. I'm looking at the market coming into that level, maybe wicking through and then seeing a nice shift of momentum to the downside. So all eyes on this 99-100 mark, stops above and looking for a move back down to that price swing low. If you're feeling brave, you can look to push it to 93. But for me, if I do get into any trades for CAD Yen, my targets probably will be at that prior low at 95,700. So look at some more downside as long as you don't go and break through some structure. So as long as we don't break through this prior high here, if we do, you might see a bit more upside, maybe back into that resistance there. Might be seeing a deeper pullback. But for me, we'll be focused on this 99-100 level for a push back down to that prior low at 95,700 for next week. Okay, so now on to pound USD. So for this one has been correctively rolling over to the downside, as we can see here, since mid-December, and now we've just seen a strong impulse move to the other side back into the resistance here. However, we have failed to break through some structure, so I'm still bearish on pound USD, still looking for some shorts. Very, very similar analysis to EURUSD, strong impulsive move back into structure, looking for some shorts, and again pound USD looking for some shorts as well. So if I see some structure, if I see the structure here respected, some wicks to the upside, nice close below, maybe on the 4H time frame, we'll start looking for some shorts for a push back down to exactly where it came from, into that price swing low, since we are still respecting that bearish structure. If we do break through and see a strong push above and some nice healthy correction, then I'll change my bias to bullish and look for some buys on that higher low back to the highs, essentially back to 1.24. But for now, the bearish structure is still in place. Still looking at a big move to the downside on the monthly time frame as well. We're still respecting that prior monthly support level, key support level, big wick to the upside in December, looking for some downside for January as well. So we're still trading a very key area. I'm still looking at some sells for pound USD, mainly because that structure still points to the downside. If it does break, I'll flip my bias, but the key thing I'll be looking for at the start of next week, since we are trading at that level right now, is to see some rejection come early, London session, New York session on Monday, and then I'll be looking for some sells for a move back to the downside, targets being exactly where it came from at 1.184 for next week. Okay, so now on to pound CAD. So pound CAD still rolling over to the downside. We've had a really nice reversal of this big bullish move, and now the market's now creating lower lows and lower highs. As you can see here, market very corrective, but it's still making those lower lows and lower highs, and again looking for another one to form for another move to the downside. On the weekly time frame, I am looking for a push into this key, very key level of weekly support. Let me just get rid of that highlighter tool. As you can see there, very key support. We broke through, no retest of that level, so we do have a quite likely chance the market's coming back to retest it, either to continue to the upside or maybe break back underneath. We'll find out when we get there. But pound CAD for me, bearish bias for this one going into next week. We'll be looking at some shorts coming into around that resistance there, or even a retest of this structure here as well. Oh, did not mean to do that. A retest of this structure here as well around the 1.63 mark. So these are the two levels I'll keep my eye on. Similar opportunity to NZD CAD. We've had that reversal, now looking to play with that bearish structure. Again, both CAD pairs as well, so they're both correlated to some extent. But yeah, pound CAD, we'll be looking at some shorts at 1.63 and 1.64, something like this, and shorts probably back to the prior low, depending on risk reward. I might look to push into 1.6, which is where that key weekly level is trading at. So 1.6 down into there, or into that prior low, which is at 1.6140. But nonetheless, we'll be looking at sells only for pound CAD unless we take out structure, break through this wick high here, and then I'll be looking at a potential reversal back to the upside. But for me, we'll be looking to play with that bearish bias there for pound CAD. So keep an eye out 163, nice respect to that level, rejection, candlestick patterns either at 1.63 or 1.64, and we'll be looking at some shorts right back down to where it came from, and then potentially 1.6 there as well. So that's the plan going into next week for pound CAD. Okay, so now onto pound yen. So looking for shorts for pound yen here. You can see of late, really nice bearish structure here. We had that down move consolidation, broke to the downside, a lot of momentum. Now the market's placed a really nice swing low, swing high. Now we're looking for that pattern to repeat for another move back down to that prior lows. And we do have a huge confluence with this key daily level here, which is trading around the 160 mark. Key support, as you can see, multiple times there, a bit of a fake out, multiple times there, again another fake out, another retest, and now that's coming in as resistance. So if we can hold this level here, I will anticipate another swing to the downside for pound yen and some nice sells for this one. Targets back down at that prior low at 155 400, we'll call it. So pound yen for me, just playing with that structure that we're trading in right now. We've got huge confluence with that daily level there, and we do have that fib level, or I think 0.618 coming into play there as well, where we're trading at. So as the market is quite choppy right now, I would like to see some momentum come back into the market, maybe a spike to the upside and then a push to the downside. Right now the market's kind of just moving sideways. I don't really want to jump into the market as it's doing that. So if I can see a bit of a push to the upside and then come back down again, that's what I'll start to look for pound yen, just because we want to see that momentum come back in. But nonetheless, if we can hold 160, we'll be looking at some shorts right back down to this 155 700 mark, and potentially lower as well for next week. Okay, so now on to gold. So gold's still rallying to the upside. You can see for this one, very clear structure here, consecutive higher lows here as the market is still pushing to the upside. And again, that's exactly what happened this week. Another pullback, higher low formation, and the market rallied to the upside. So me for gold, still very bullish on this one. Again, staying in tune with the structure, looking at some key areas where we could be heading towards. We're coming into this 1870 area here, which is a very important level. And beyond that, if we break through, we've got this 1915, 1910 area here, key resistance there, key support there as well. So if you break through that, that'll be the next target, as we have broken quite cleanly through that level there. So just playing with the daily structure, because if you do zoom out, the market is actually quite sideways here. Just playing between the key levels and just following momentum really for gold. And with this bullish structure here, next week I will be looking for a higher low to form, again, as long as we maintain the structure here. So for gold next week, looking for a pullback, since we are coming to that daily level around the 1870 mark. So I don't really want to be looking to buy into that. There might be some short-term sells, take advantage of the retracement if you're looking to sell gold. But for me, I do have a bullish bias, so I won't be looking to try and sell it. Again, there could be a nice trade there, but for me, I have a bullish bias, so I'll only be looking to buy the pair back up again. A key area I'll be interested in is around the 1834 at that prior higher low. So if I can see rejection around that, I'll be more than happy to go long there. Another push back to 1870. If we break through that, then we can start looking for 1910 up there as well. And if we don't get that pullback, we can look for a retest and take some trades into that area there as well. So for me, looking at 1870, which we kind of just about hit, and then beyond that 1910. So hopefully we can see some retracement back down to the 1834, 1830 area. That would be great for some buys, risk reward as well. Looking for a push back to 1870, and then if you can break through that, looking at 1910 beyond that. So that's the plan. That's the plan for gold, as long as we maintain this bullish structure, and looking at 1910 overall for next week. Okay, so now onto Bitcoin. So Bitcoin for me, again, like always, I focus mainly on the daily time frame for Bitcoin. The 4H and below gets a little bit messy, and the market's quite sideways, lacking some momentum, some volatility. So I'm mainly focusing on the higher time frames to map out structure and key areas. On the monthly time frame in particular, I'm looking for a push into this 13 to 12k mark. That's where I do see Bitcoin heading towards. So for me, only looking at shorts until we get there, until we break through some key structure. And by that, I mean this price swing high there. As you can see, really nice swing lows and swing highs. As long as we don't break through that, I'm expecting to see the market roll over to the downside. So key areas to short from being this area here. I wouldn't really entertain price action there. It's too sideways. If we see some momentum to the upside here, back into 18,500, which is that key level, that would be a nice place to short upon some rejection. Move to the downside, back down to the prior low, and then potentially 13k down there as well. Or if we get a bigger move to the upside into this consolidation there around the 20k mark, 2100, that will also be a very nice place to short from and take advantage of some sells into the prior low. And if you're feeling a little bit brave, you can probably push it all the way down to 13k there if you're trying to catch the big swing in one move there. But push down to those lows, risk to rewards looking pretty healthy for Bitcoin, either which way. So it's up to you guys how you want to manage your trades in terms of your targets and everything. But the overall move, I'm still looking at 13k there, but I'd only look to short around the 18,400 or 20k mark there. So that's the plan for Bitcoin going into the next few weeks, really. We'll see how things get on for this one. Okay, so now onto the bonus pair, which is AUD JPY. So for this pair, the JPY pair, I'm looking at some more downside for this one. In particular, I'm looking at this monthly level all the way down here for us to get a retest of that level. We never got the retest when we broke through on the monthly or the weekly there, so I'm expecting us to come back down and retest 86. And recently we've just broken through this key support level here. I'm looking for us to go and retest around the 91 mark. Maybe next week you can see a nice push to the upside, big wick, and then come back down and retest 86. So I'll be looking good there for AUD JPY. Now in terms of pinpointing that entry, I'm dropping to the 4H time frame to work out the entry area. And I do have an area that is looking good in terms of confluence. You can see the market has been very, very consistent with these low highs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A bunch of low highs in this area, and we also do have this key area of supply consolidation here where we consolidated for a few candles and broke to the downside for a lot of momentum at around this 92 area here. So a lot of confluence here. If I can see some strong rejection around there, some nice wicks, I'll be more than happy to look to enter the trade and look for some shorts. In terms of targets, there's a few areas I'm looking at. There's this support level here at 90. Again, that could be a nice little target. Just be done with the trade in and out. If you're looking to push the trade a little bit further, you've obviously got the lows down here as well. And obviously we've got the monthly level down there as well. So it's up to you guys, how many pips you're looking at for a trade. If you're looking for a big swing trade, you've got 86 at that monthly level. Obviously, the further you push the target, the less likely the market will get there. So it's up to you on your risk reward, how you want to manage the trade, but there's numerous targets you can look to aim for. For me, I might just look for a push into that level, depending on the risk reward if it's there. If not, then I'll probably push it down to that prior low, but we'll see closer to the day anyway. But that is what I'm going to be looking for AUD JPY going into next week. But yeah guys, that's the end of the video. Hope you have enjoyed that and found that useful. Have some nice guidance going into the following trading week. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like. It does really help out the channel. Subscribe if you haven't done it already, and if you're new, make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any videos or any streams going into the future. But thank you so much for watching the video, guys. Have a great trading week, and I'll catch you all in the next one.